Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian and resistance fighter, developed a provocative and unsettling view of human stupidity, one that transcends a mere intellectual shortcoming or simple lapse in judgment. For Bonhoeffer, stupidity is not merely a weakness, it is a profound and destructive social force that is, paradoxically, much more dangerous than evil itself. He argues that stupidity is a form of resistance to critical thinking, an active refusal to reflect on actions, ideas, and their consequences. Unlike evil, which can be confronted and restrained through reason, stupidity is impervious to intellectual engagement. It resists awareness, self-correction, and the capacity for change. Bonhoeffer's view illuminates the crucial distinction between ignorance and stupidity. While ignorance may stem from a lack of knowledge, stupidity is a deeper, more entrenched condition, an unwillingness or inability to embrace new ideas, facts, or viewpoints. Stupid individuals do not simply lack knowledge. They actively reject the possibility of learning or evolving their perspectives. They often cling to their unexamined beliefs and reject intellectual challenges that might force them to confront uncomfortable truths. As a result, stupidity is not simply an absence of thought, it is a refusal to think critically, which makes it an insidious and self-perpetuating force. This dangerous mindset finds its most terrifying expression in the historical context of authoritarian regimes, particularly during the rise of Nazism. Bonhoeffer witnessed firsthand how the passive compliance of ordinary citizens became a central component of the regime's success. The refusal to think critically or question authority allowed the Nazi regime to carry out atrocities on an unimaginable scale. What made this compliance so destructive was not the presence of active malice, or rather the absence of resistance from individuals who had become numb to moral and intellectual inquiry. Stupid people, driven by a deep-seated passivity, allowed themselves to be swept up in the ideology of the regime, accepting its simplistic and dangerous narratives without question. The relationship between power and stupidity is another key aspect of Bonhoeffer's theory. When people gain positions of power, they often become less inclined to engage in critical thinking. The structures of power reinforce this by rewarding conformity and punishing independent thought. Those in power often surround themselves with advisors and systems that confirm their biases, creating a feedback loop of ignorance that is difficult to escape. As a result, the powerful may become less self-aware, more resistant to alternative viewpoints, and more prone to unquestioning obedience to authority. This dynamic creates an environment where decisions are made based on irrationality or incompetence rather than rational deliberation. Bonhoeffer's paradox thus reveals a grim truth. Those who are stupid, and especially those in positions of authority, can be far more dangerous than those who act out of malice or evil intent. Their unthinking obedience to authority, their unwillingness to question, and their resistance to intellectual growth make them potent agents of social and political destruction. In a world where critical thinking and self-reflection are increasingly undervalued, Bonhoeffer's insights serve as a stark warning. Hannah Arendt, a German-American political theorist, expanded upon Bonhoeffer's ideas of stupidity by introducing the concept of the banality of evil. For Arendt, the greatest evil in modern society does not necessarily come from the most malicious or monstrous individuals, or rather from the ordinariness of those who commit horrific acts without any deep reflection on their consequences. This concept, introduced in her analysis of Adolf Eichmann, shifts the focus from a person's intrinsic malice to the alarming capacity of ordinary people to become agents of evil through thoughtless obedience and a lack of critical engagement. Arendt argued that Eichmann, a key architect of the Holocaust, was not a particularly evil man. Instead, he was a bureaucrat who lacked the capacity for moral reflection and merely followed orders, without any consideration for the human cost. This banality of his actions did not make him less responsible. Rather, it showed that evil in the modern world can thrive not only in the hands of deranged individuals, but in the hands of those who simply fail to think critically about their roles in larger systems. Arendt's concept is deeply connected to Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity, as it underscores the danger of passivity and conformity in individuals. Eichmann's mindset exemplifies a kind of thoughtless obedience that is fueled by stupidity, rather than malicious intent. He didn't act out of a desire to inflict harm, but rather out of an unthinking adherence to authority. Eichmann's failure to question his actions or reflect on their implications demonstrates the depth of intellectual and moral paralysis that can result from a refusal to engage in critical thought. The banal nature of stupidity in this context is not limited to Eichmann alone. Arendt suggests that modern societies are particularly vulnerable to this kind of thoughtlessness due to the overwhelming pressures to conform and obey authority. Totalitarian regimes, in particular, exploit this psychological and intellectual inertia. They rely on the masses' inability or unwillingness to engage in independent thought and reflection, which creates a fertile ground for propaganda and manipulation. By controlling the flow of information and reducing complex issues to simple, binary narratives, such regimes can effectively cultivate a populace that accepts their actions without question. This process transforms ordinary citizens into instruments of tyranny, not through their malice, but through their intellectual passivity and their failure to critically examine the world around them. Arendt's theory highlights how stupidity, when institutionalized in the form of blind obedience and uncritical thinking, can perpetuate oppressive systems. Her insight is a call to action for all of us to resist the pressures of conformity, to avoid falling into the trap of thoughtlessness, and to question the systems of power that shape our lives. It serves as a reminder that evil often flourishes in the absence of thoughtful reflection. Bertrand Russell, one of the most prominent philosophers of the 20th century, was deeply concerned with the intellectual trends of his time, especially the growing tendency to reward ignorance and penalize intelligence in modern society. He argued that foolishness, particularly in the realms of politics and society, often triumphs over intelligence, and that this reality plays a crucial role in shaping the course of history. Russell's critique of society's reverence for simple, populist ideas instead of complex, rational thinking resonates with Bonhoeffer and Arendt's views on the dangers of stupidity. However, Russell takes this further by emphasizing the societal structures that not only tolerate, but actively encourage the triumph of ignorance. One of Russell's key arguments is that the structures of modern political and social systems often reward ignorance while they penalize independent thinking and critical reasoning. In a world where complex issues are reduced to sound bites and slogans, the public is encouraged to adopt simplistic solutions that do not address the true complexity of the problems at hand. Russell saw this as a dangerous trend, especially in political discourse, where a leader who can present an easily digestible narrative is often more successful than one who offers nuanced, thoughtful analysis. Russell's analysis also touches on the psychological comfort that comes with stupidity. People often find it easier to accept simple, black and white narratives that provide clear answers to complex questions. Critical thinking, on the other hand, can be uncomfortable and challenging. It requires the willingness to face ambiguity, uncertainty, and contradiction, things that most people are reluctant to do. The allure of simple answers is incredibly strong. Russell understood that while intelligence demands effort and introspection, stupidity offers a false sense of security. This phenomenon is amplified by the rise of mass media and social media in the 21st century. Russell's observations, though made in the mid-20th century, resonate deeply with today's media landscape. In the digital age, the rapid dissemination of ideas through social media platforms has created echo chambers, where people are exposed only to information that reinforces their existing beliefs. This contributes to the creation of ideological bubbles, where critical thinking is replaced by groupthink. The intellectual laziness fostered by these platforms leads to an environment where ignorance is not only tolerated, but actively nurtured. In his essay Philosophy and Politics, Russell also addressed the paradox that in many political systems, intelligence and rational thinking can be seen as subversive or even dangerous. This is especially evident in authoritarian regimes, where those in power often prefer a compliant and uncritical populace to one that questions authority. Russell argued that the more intelligent and reflective individuals are, the more they are likely to find themselves at odds with the prevailing political ideology, and thus subjected to marginalization or repression. This creates a cycle in which intelligence is not only devalued, but actively suppressed, leaving the field wide open for foolishness to thrive. Stupidity, in many ways, is not just an individual failing, but a contagious social phenomenon. Ideas, especially irrational ones, spread rapidly through societies, often gaining strength and support simply through repetition and social reinforcement. This contagion of stupidity is particularly dangerous because it erodes independent thought and critical reflection on a collective level. One of the most dangerous aspects of this social contagion is the role that social groups and peer pressure play in reinforcing ignorance. Humans are inherently social creatures, and our need for belonging and acceptance often overrides the desire to think independently. In such environments, people often stop thinking for themselves because they fear social rejection or alienation. Over time, this collective mentality leads to the widespread adoption of simplistic, uncritical worldviews that are often disconnected from reality. In the face of widespread ignorance, manipulation, and intellectual passivity, escaping the cycle of stupidity is not just a personal challenge, it is a societal imperative. The ideas of thinkers like Bonhoeffer, Arendt, and Russell offer a powerful roadmap. First and foremost, Bonhoeffer's theory underscores the importance of continuous intellectual engagement. To escape the trap of stupidity, we must commit ourselves to lifelong learning and the pursuit of truth, even when it is uncomfortable. The most effective way to resist these forces is to continually challenge ourselves to think critically about the world around us. Arendt's idea of the banality of evil offers another important lesson: the need for moral and intellectual reflection. To break free from this cycle, we must reject passive obedience and embrace our role as active moral agents in the world. This means developing the capacity to question authority, to engage with challenging ideas, and to take responsibility for our actions. Bertrand Russell's critique calls us to recognize the systems and structures that actively promote ignorance. To protect ourselves from the influence of stupidity, we must recognize the intellectual forces that shape our world. The media, particularly social media, is one of the most significant drivers. To protect ourselves from this, we must become more discerning consumers of information. This requires developing media literacy skills and learning to recognize bias, misinformation, and propaganda. Another strategy is to surround ourselves with people who challenge our thinking and encourage intellectual growth. By building networks of individuals who value critical thinking and intellectual honesty, we create a counterbalance to the social pressures that encourage conformity. Ultimately, escaping the cycle of stupidity is not just about resisting external forces, it is also about cultivating internal resilience. By continually challenging ourselves, questioning authority, developing intellectual humility, and fostering a community of independent thinkers, we can protect ourselves from the influence of stupidity and become active participants in the creation of a more thoughtful, reflective society. In conclusion, the ideas of Bonhoeffer, Arendt, and Russell offer a powerful roadmap. While the forces that perpetuate ignorance are strong, they are not insurmountable. In the face of the pervasive influence of stupidity, we must become the resistors, the thinkers, and the questioners who shape a better, more enlightened future. As we've explored, the influence of stupidity is a powerful and dangerous force, but by understanding the mechanisms behind it, we can protect ourselves. If you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We upload new videos every day. For those of you interested in further enriching your understanding, check out the link in the description and the pinned comment for a selection of recommended books. Stay curious, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay critical. Until next time, keep questioning and keep growing.